Good morning. This is Clarinda with Energetic Healing. Wanted to talk about a topic that is deep. It's one of those areas that's sensitive, where we probably have a lot of vulnerability. It's not always comfortable to talk about, but I feel like it does need to be called out and talked about because right now with all of these transits, especially with the gate 44 of truth and the gate 26 of integrity, this theme of being our authentic selves is really coming up. So just sharing my little experience with this topic. And I know that there's probably other people out there that are experiencing this as well or have experienced it. And even if you don't experience it in the same way that I've experienced it, on one level or another, we all kind of deal with this issue. So for me, recently it's been on my mind, and it comes up a lot over the years, especially when I started my little spiritual journey, which was it was in 2011. And so I had a wake up. It was definitely shocking and definitely eye-opening, jaw-dropping, and scary. And after that, I was completely changed. I was a different person. And the first thing that I wanted to do was find out more about who I was. I wanted to find out more about my history, my ancestry, and where my people came from. Because, it was a hot topic and everybody was getting so excited about it. My family had kept their oral tradition. I knew that we had Native American ancestry. I also was aware that we had European or white ancestry, as well as African. So I wanted to know more, though. I still wanted to know more. I was like, it doesn't explain enough. Like, I just want to go deeper into it. So I started doing like some of those DNA tests, and I got my results back I did like 3 different tests. And I remember getting my results back and feeling so many different feelings about what I got back. So basically it broke down overall, I was 66%, well, it was about 65, 66% African, which that part, I kind of thought that it would have been a little bit higher, to be honest, but so it was 66% African. And then it was like 30% European. I had some Native American, I had Asian, and also some, I consider the Latin, the way that mine works as far as Iberian to still fall into Europe. So, but I had Latin, I had Asian, I had Inuit, some that I was really surprised about, Southeast Pacific Islander. And so I was just like, okay, wow, this is interesting, this is deep. Was digging all the way in, going into depth, trying to research these connections. I was on 23andMe, and so they match you up to a lot of your living relatives. And that was a really interesting experience. And I was excited. So I started reaching out to contact a lot of my relatives. On 23andMe, you can look and you can see like your percentage of what you are. It gives you like this circle. It breaks down the percentages of what you are. And I was like shocked because a lot of my family that pulled up, they were 100% European. And I was reaching out to quite a few of them. I didn't get a lot of responses back. I got a few responses back. Some people were interested in talking and connecting to see where, our link was, where we connected. But there were a lot that didn't respond, didn't ever respond to any of my inquiries. And I understand there's probably multiple reasons why that was. So for me, it was a challenging thing. my grandmother had told us about, you know, her mother's father, who was Irish, Scott Irish. And so I knew that. She told us that her mother was Native and Native and white, and her mother's mother was Native and her father was European. And the relationship was not a bad relationship, but it was complicated at that time. My grandmother was herself born in 1927. So things, you know, thinking back to her mother's mother, like her mother's mother, that was quite a ways back. And things were a lot different in our world and in our society. So I knew that he had a family that was completely white. And then he had a family with my great-great-grandmother. And they lived in close proximity, but that was that. So I was aware that that existed in my bloodline. I knew that, you know, we had European, and then on my grandfather's side, he had always told us that we were Portuguese, and his aunts and great aunts, and like they kind of passed that down. A lot of stories passed down through through oral tradition. My on his side, grandfather being his grandfather being part Native and white and black. So there was a lot of mixing. There was a lot of people moving around. And I knew that one of my ancestors on my grandfather's side was a slave. I knew that she came over from Western Africa, and that she had taken on the Portuguese Christianity, the religion. And so when people did that, the Portuguese government said that if they would basically accept Catholicism, accept that religion, that they would be granted this kind of like status of being Portuguese. So anyways, she came over to America. I believe it was in North Carolina area, and she had a son with a man that was Native American, and he was actually Creek Indian, and it was a complicated situation. It was a complicated. He had been actually a high status, either shaman or chief in his tribe, but because of his relationship with an African slave, because of her status, he was basically kind of pushed out of the tribe. And so there was a lot of like interesting dynamics that went on within these relationships in the past. So back to me and in the present, I found myself struggling a lot with trying to integrate all of these different pieces of who I am. In our society, people look at you and they say, oh, you're a black lady. I remember I used to be offended by that a little bit, because not because I'm ashamed of being black, I'm very proud of being black, but because I'm more than that. You know, you really can't just look at someone and tell who they are, what they are. And so I remember like feeling hurt sometimes, because it was like I couldn't be everything that I was. Oftentimes in the black community, it would be, if you're trying to even tap into that, you're a sellout. Or for me growing up, because I was in a lot of advanced classes, I would be acting white, or I would be talking white. So you would get a kind of a backlash from both sides, and it was like, goodness, who am I supposed to be? I can't be either of these people. I can't be me, because at the end of the day, it's like that's all part of me. So when I moved out to Arizona, I've talked about that a little bit when I was talking about astrocartography, because I said that it was challenging for me, and it was a challenging line for me to live on. But it doesn't mean that I didn't have some spiritual experiences that I now look back on and find very deep. So looking back and reflecting, I was doing work with a shaman, and also I had met this woman. I remember her very clearly. I remember her name. She was a Thundercloud, and I knew my great-great-grandfather was in the Cloud clan on my grandfather's side. And when I met this woman, I remember this feeling that I got, this like lightning that shot out of my solar plexus. And I knew that we were somehow connected. I knew that me and this woman had ties. She was the first person that told me, she said that I was a rainbow child and that I had these 3 different lines, Native, Black, and white, and that part of my job was going to be to bring these together. And so I was like, that's pretty deep, that's pretty powerful. It was a powerful experience. It was life-changing, really. This lady, she knew things. She was just amazing. I ended up working with another shaman there, and I did some sweat lodge, did the sweat lodge. That was a amazing and crazy experience. It was terrifying to go in the dark and to have to kind of face all of these things that were coming at me when I was in there. I remember feeling like so overwhelmed, like I was gonna pass out when I was in there. But now I look back and I'm like, wow, you did that. You did that. That was crazy. But she told me, because I had been doing ancestral work and wanting to connect, to my ancestry. But she told me that something, and I remember becoming mad at her when she told me this. And she said that you have white ancestors that want to connect with you and they want to help you. They've been with you. They want to provide guidance. I remember feeling a lot of different ways, like when she said that. At the same time, now, years later, when I think about it, it's like, you know what? I mean, that is a part of what makes me me. That is a part of who I am. Now, don't get me wrong. I've never had a problem like with white people. This was more of an internal problem, like of me coming to terms with the wholeness of my identity. And I just remember feeling so many emotions. I was tearful, I was angry, I was hurt a lot because of the way our society treated us. Not a lot of my family not wanting to connect because I was Black. The dynamics, again, very complicated. I understand that, but it did hurt. And so just like thinking about all this recently with this piece on integrity, authenticity, realizing that there has been a part of myself that I have not really come to terms with, not really embraced fully. With everything that we see happening in our country, in our world right now, I think that I'm probably not the only person that feels this. I feel like there's probably a lot of African Americans that have struggled with this whole thing. And at the end of the day, most of the people that are Black in America, and maybe also in other countries, are not completely African. So that is like one of those hard truths that we have to come to terms with. We, most of us, we may have varying percentages of it, but we all have, I'm not gonna say all like 100%, but there is a large percentage of us that have part of that as our ancestry. And so to be whole, to be truly ourselves and truly be in touch with our spirit and be able to come and be authentic, there is this level of inner work that has to be done to bring these pieces and these aspects together. Because how can we, be changed? How can we tell people to embrace themselves fully if we're not doing that? If we're not embracing 100% of who we are? And by doing this, not only do we narrow the difference a lot. We narrow this playing field because it's like this recognition that we really are all connected some way or another, sometimes in ways that we wouldn't have even imagined. These links can be like literally blood links, family. And so I'm just saying that at this point in time, I think that it's important for us to really be truthful with ourselves. I'm not saying that this doesn't hurt or cause pain, but for me, it is a part of me being my authentic self. I cannot be 100% whole if I'm only embracing 65% of who I am and not embracing the totality of it all. This again leads back to the G Center. This for me has been one of those issues where it affects the way that I love myself. Um, Wanting to not rock boats, not say the wrong thing. And there's probably a lot of people that are struggling with not wanting to say the wrong thing, not wanting to have these conversations because they can be so uncomfortable. But the problem has been that we have not had these conversations. We have not talked about these issues. We've buried them, we've suppressed them, repressed them, which both suppressed and repressed. And they have just been brewing and simmering underneath. And so it's really, to me, a call to action by the universe, a cosmic call to action for us to do that inner healing, that inner work, bringing ourselves into 100% alignment, digging into those places where there might be aspects of ourselves that we did not want to embrace, but that are calling out for us to connect with, so that we can move forward in creating a reality where those differences really don't affect us anymore because we realize how minute they really are. So I hope that this reached someone that needed to hear this. I'm sending out lots of love to everyone because I recognize that there's many ways that this affects people, not just Black people, but also white people. There's trauma for both of us. And I embrace that and understand it truly. But these are the things that we do need to talk about. These are the issues that are going to help us heal. I used to use this analogy for people because I was a nurse. And it was, to me, when I'm doing wound care for someone, they have a huge gaping wound, and there's an infection in the wound, but we try to close the wound anyway, to try to heal it. Well, we can't do that. If we don't deal with the area that's infected, if we don't deal with that infection and treat that infection, we have to kind of leave the wound open while we're doing this so that things can drain and pass out of the body, be cleansed. So we have to go through this process of this healing, this cleansing, this releasing. It can be painful, but we have to we have to heal it. We can't just cover it up. We can't just close the wound up because then we go septic. Eventually that infection reaches our bloodstream, and then we can lose our lives. So this is, from a medical perspective, but yet at the same time, it's kind of like where we are in our society and what we've done with the wounds that exist. We've tried to close up wounds where infections have been simmering. And so I feel like now is the time that we have to come in with the heavy hitting antibiotics. We have to come in with the daily wound care to cleanse this wound out so that we can finally sew it up and heal it completely. So lots of love. I hope that you have a great day. I know that was a little bit of a heavy message, but at the end of the day, it's through this work, this healing, that we find peace. And we can't have peace without first going into those shadows and shining the light on them. It's from the darkness that we go into the light. And so I'm just at that point where it's like, I've got to shine the light on all of these things because they've been festering and they've been left in the dark to fester. Things like to grow in the dark. And we need to shine the light on them and clear it out and clean it. So sending you lots of love, peace, and blessings to everyone.